everyone, and welcome to That's So Auburn, podcast hosted by me, Mayor Nancy Backus. I don't know about you, but recently I've found myself reaching for that sweater in the morning and even closing the windows at night, and it can only mean one thing. Dun dun dun. Winter is coming. So it's fitting that our 7th episode is focused on all things winter related and how you can prepare for the season. Joining me on the podcast today are 4 special guests, each with a unique perspective and knowledge about how to navigate the season. We will talk to some of our City of Auburn staff members about how to prepare and also how we manage our roads during rough weather. We will then hear from the Auburn School District and Waste Management to help you better understand how they deal with their operations when Mother Nature decides to send us winter weather and give us some insight into delays, service interruptions, and closures and how those decisions are never taken lightly. So bundle up, grab a cup of something warm, and stay tuned. I promise a series of riveting conversations and perhaps a few more references to decades-old TV shows with finales that crushed the hopes and dreams of millions of fans, including me. I think the House of Dragons is shaping up to be something special, though. Winter really is coming. I'm joined now by Jason Shea, Waste Management District Manager, and Laura Mosier, Waste Management Public Sector Service Manager. And I asked them to join us because we often hear confusion from our residents when their garbage, compost, and recycling pickup doesn't happen when the roads are icy, and I hope their message will help you better prepare for winter. Hello and welcome, Jason and Laura. It's great to have you with me on the podcast.
Thank you.
Hello.
So Jason, let's start with you. You're the district manager for Waste Management, which runs a vital and important waste collection service for our city. Before we get into the winter weather discussion, can you tell our listeners about yourself and how Waste Management serves Auburn?
So I've been with Waste Management for about 7 years now. For the first 5 years, I handled residential and commercial for the city of Auburn. And 2 years ago, I got promoted to the district manager position.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And we're here to support the city of Auburn with trash collection, recycle, and yard waste debris for all of the city.
Excellent. Thank you. And Laura, please tell everyone a little bit about yourself as well.
Yes, thank you, and thanks for having us here today. I have been with Waste Management or in this industry for 27 years and started in the city of Auburn 27 years ago, servicing residential, commercial, multifamily customers, and I have done many, many things for Waste Management. And my most current role, I work with city staff in managing our contract and all the services that we provide in Auburn.
And we've been in numerous meetings and gatherings together, so
We have.
I have always appreciated your service to the city, so thank you, Laura. Really do want to say thank you to you, Jason, as well, and all of Waste Management for all that they do for us. Can we now talk a little bit about how snow and ice and maybe some other emergencies can affect your operations? So I have some questions. These are not yes or no questions, so be prepared. These are not multiple choice quizzes. So the first one, how does Waste Management make the decision to interrupt services? That is one that everybody wants to know about.
So my team and I, when we see snow or ice in the forecast, we constantly watch the forecast throughout the week. And then when we expect snow to hit, my team and I, we get out at about 1 o'clock in the morning of the day of the snow. We drive the routes. We try to hit as many streets as possible. And then we meet back at the district at about 3:30 in the morning. And that's where we determine whether the streets are safe for not only our drivers to be out on the road, but for us to be out on the road with the community, because that's one thing that we do not want is if we put these trucks that weigh 50, 60,000 pounds out on the road, we don't want to jeopardize not only our drivers, but the community safety. And some of these trucks, once they get out there with the snow and the ice, they're like a gigantic sled and they won't be able to stop.
Yeah, I think that's something that maybe people forget is they think, well, my four-wheel drive can make it or my little car can make it. But That's a lot of weight that gets going and sliding. So when you say that you're out at 1:30 in the morning, I'm sure you're not just visiting the flat parts of the city, are you?
No, we're in Lee Hill, Lakeland Hills, West Hill, all the places that you'd think would be bad or the worst sections of Auburn. And even myself, I have a four-wheel drive vehicle. I've turned sideways on some of those hills because the ice and the snow has been so bad. So I could only imagine putting somebody else out in a truck that weighs that much, how scary it would be.
And then, Laura, once that decision is made, what's your responsibility?
Well, I'm up, not quite that early in the morning, but I am up, and I look forward to communicating with Jason once he makes that determination. So he may call me, email me, and then I immediately contact city staff, and we kind of put everything into motion from that point once that decision is made. We have a wmnorthwest.com/Auburn service alerts page where we update and put specifics on there. Like if we're not going to operate in Lakeland Hills or West Hill, we post that information on there, and then we also give instruction what customers need to do with their garbage, yard waste, and recycling. Mm-hmm. And then we also prepare for outbound communications to all of our customers, and that is set up by customer preference. So they can either receive phone calls, text messages, or an email. And customers just need to go to wm.com and register their account, and they can select whatever preference they like. So that's really the key for getting a message at your home.
Great. That's great advice, and I hope everyone listening will do that, wm.com.
Yes.
And
register your account.
Mm-hmm. And I know I have done that, and so I will be receiving a text message.
Very good.
Yes. So how do you work alongside city staff leading up to a decision like that? What sort of contingency plans are typically in place? I mean, there have to be times when I know for a fact that the weather comes in and it's a surprise, right? The meteorologists weren't really tracking it, and all of a sudden we have ice and snow, and no one was ready for it.
Yeah, we dealt with that earlier this year with a freeze at about 6:30. We released the drivers out to the road, and then we had a hard freeze about an hour later, and we had to pull everyone off the road. A lot of the drivers just sat there for about 2 hours. And then we called everybody back just because it was not safe to be up on the hillsides. We were able to service the flat grounds, but up on the hills with ice, it's very difficult. And so we're in constant communication with city staff. It normally starts the day before when we know something like a big event like this is going to happen. And we communicate the plan, and whether it's going to be an hour, 2 hour delay in our start, or we're going to cancel it altogether.
So there's communication with the city staff, but it's not the City of Auburn employees who are making that decision as to whether service is disrupted for the day, correct?
Correct. That is my decision, and so that's why it's just not me out there in the morning driving around. I have 5 sets of eyes, my fleet manager, all my route managers. It's a team effort to make sure that we can either go out and service like normal, or we have to park everybody for the day.
You know, I think we'll use part of this podcast as our recording, our outgoing recording for phone calls in the winter, where it says it's not the City of Auburn that makes that decision. It's not my responsibility as mayor to make that decision. You'd be surprised how many people think it is, and I do not wield that type of power. That's all on you, Jason.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. I'm happy to give that over to you.
Well,
So we'll just play
if
that.
I could mention too, in that communication back to city staff, I know that city staff is also posting on city's social
Right,
media,
absolutely.
so that we're always in sync between waste management and the city.
Absolutely.
What's going on?
Yes, it is a partnership, and it requires all members of that party to be doing what they're responsible for to ensure the safety of the drivers and our community. So what can people do to help ensure that their home isn't skipped when collection happens during or directly after a snowstorm? You know, where on the street or near their driveway should the bins be?
I would try to put them in the same location as they normally do. That way it creates less confusion for the drivers. And I get it that there's snow piled up on the sidewalks, or, you might not be able to get your container to the street, but as close to the normal location as you can. That way it creates less confusion for it. It might not be your regular driver. It could be a fill-in guy. And so if it's a fill-in guy, they know right by the house. They don't know down the street or up the block or whatever. But as long as you can get it closer to the normal location, that's probably the best.
Okay, I have a question for you. Should it be up on the sidewalk, right at the edge of the curbing, or should the bins be in the street with the back edges of them against the curb?
So there's two different cases in that scenario. So I would say if I live on a hill and I put my container out on the street and it's on a hill, I'd probably want it up on flatter ground, which is the curb. If I don't live on a hill and it's flat ground, putting it out on the street where the container's not going to roll anywhere, especially with snow and ice, in wind, I've seen those carts blow right down the road full. And so any flattest ground possible is probably the best place.
Okay.
Without blocking the sidewalk.
Without blocking the sidewalk. So I think that's going to answer a lot of questions, because when I drive around, I see some that, even in my own neighborhood, I see some that are out at the street level, backed up to the curb, and I see some that are up. We don't have sidewalks, but I see them up on the grass area. So I always wondered which it should be. So thank you for sharing that. Neither is necessarily wrong. Both could be right. Both could be wrong.
If you do put it
Clear
on the
as mud.
sidewalk,
Yes.
you have to make sure that a person in a wheelchair can get by. So that's the biggest thing.
Perfect. So that ADA compliance is necessary. Thank you. Thank you. All right. So if service is disrupted, do those routes that were skipped that day get added back the following day?
No, they go to your next week's service. So it will be a double service, no extra charge. And then with recycle, since recycle goes every other week, it would actually be 3 weeks from, so it's a long time to go. And I know it's an inconvenience for a lot of people, but we have 2 containers that sit in front of Waste Management at 2nd Street. And so they can come over and drop off recycling materials at any time.
It just depends on how trashy you and your family are, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think it's important to remember, too, the reason they can't collect the next day is they already have a full day
Sure.
to service. So I know it seems very logical to do that, but it's...
That's one of the questions that gets asked the most. I know that when we take the calls in our office is, when will my collection be? And then there are concerns. I don't want to leave garbage bags in my garage for a week. I don't want it to invite critters, mm-hmm. and we certainly understand that, but that is why you do have the option of bringing. Is it garbage and recycle, or just recycle?
The recycle.
Okay.
So if there were to be a weather event 2 weeks in a row on the same day, like Tuesday and a Tuesday,
yes,
that second Tuesday,
we've had that happen.
We have,
yes.
Right? And we have set up disposal sites for folks that just really can't hold on to it and want to get it out of their home. We had one set up down at our facility off of 2nd Street. So there's typically going to be 2 locations, and we put that information out there also.
Good. Over communicate, I think, is the key here. I know that we've also had some people call in or email or social media where everything goes. The fact that, well, I live on flat ground, my roads are safe, I don't know why you're not collecting for me. And I'm pretty sure I know the answer to that, because every route is not just on flat ground. And you need to make sure that you're able to cover the entire route. Is that?
That's accurate.
Okay.
And we try to get, when we send drivers out, we try to get everything off the ground. I would hate to go out and only get 400 customers in the city of Auburn, and then one of those 400 customers calls their friend up in Lakeland Hills and says, how come your trash didn't get picked up today?
Right.
It creates a lot of confusion throughout the city, a lot of social media posts. And it's just better if we can all work together and have everything done at the same time.
I couldn't agree more. I live on a flat street, but I never, ever do I ever want Waste Management to pick up my garbage and not be able to pick up the rest of the area. So just putting that out there, I don't need any favors like that. So we will be able to hold on to our garbage for as long as it takes until the wonderful Waste Management team is able to come and collect that for us.
Yeah, and like this year with the bad event that we had, that we were closed for a week, we put drop boxes throughout the city, so if customers needed to have service, they could run their garbage down to, I think we did Les Grove and Branyon Park, so there was a couple locations this year.
Yeah, Les Grove and Brannon Park, I know were both places where there was collection, and I know a number of people used them, and they truly appreciated that option. So you've mentioned a little bit about how it's communicated with service interruptions. I don't think we can say it enough times, so do you want to share that again? Let's just overemphasize how it's communicated.
So first, we always recommend for folks to go to wmnorthwest.com and select Auburn, and there'll be a service alert on that page, and we're always going to get to that the quickest for posts. Also on that website are 2 documents, tips for preparing your materials for collection, if you have that extra garbage, that extra yard waste, that extra recycle, and then just other frequently asked questions that a lot of people have all the time. So those documents live there constantly. And then our next step is to coordinate with the city on social media so that we can put that out not only on our Facebook page, but the city can get that out on their page. And then we also prepare our outbound communications. And again, that's your choice. Register on WM.com if you'd like to receive a phone call, a text message, or an email.
Wonderful. And like I said, I've signed up for text messages.
I'm making note of that.
Yes. So, Laura, I look forward to receiving a message from you. Hopefully, I don't have to receive any messages from you. Let's put it that way. Let's say that it's going to be a beautiful winter.
It'll be a lovely winter.
It will be
Because
lovely.
we don't like snow either.
We definitely don't.
No. You know, once I came into this role as mayor, I don't look at things the same way anymore. I don't look at our streets the same. I don't think of snow the same. There's just so many things that take on a whole new life when you're in a role where you're providing services to the public, like waste management. I'm sure same thing for you. It's, you look out that window and some people kids think, yay, no school today. Some people think, yay, I don't have to go to work today. I think it's going to be a horrible day.
Right. And I think we do the same thing there.
Yes. We don't even talk about that 4-letter word.
No,
we don't. A lot of people think it's an easy decision for us, and that, you know, we're making money by not collecting, which is, you know, kind of the furthest from the truth that there could be.
Right.
It wreaks a lot of havoc on our operations and the recovery of the materials that are out there.
Absolutely. And I think the most important thing is we don't take lightly the impact that we're having on an entire community by not having the service. Right? That disruption of service is not taken lightly. We have a lot of things that need to be taken into consideration before, but the safety of the employees, the drivers of waste management, and the safety of our community. And as you mentioned earlier, Jason, a 50, 60,000 pound vehicle sliding down a hill is not something that anyone wants to be in close proximity to. So let's just always be thankful that safety is a number one consideration, and a little bit of, you know, it's an imposition, I know, for garbage if it stacks up, but the safety of everyone involved is far more important than that little bit of inconvenience. So thank you, Laura, Jason, for giving time to our listeners to share this important information. And I hope now that our listeners can be better prepared for how to deal with their garbage, compost, and recycling should the need arise during our next storm. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
now joined by Cindi Blansfield from the Auburn School District. She is the Associate Superintendent of Business and Operations and also oversees emergency management for the district. That's quite a big job. She's here to talk to us about winter preparedness on the K through 12 side of things. Welcome, Cindi.
Thank you.
It's great to have you on this podcast. I want to first extend my deepest admiration for you and the entire Auburn School District on how you all responded to the pandemic and for your partnership with the City of Auburn during these trying times. It does not go unnoticed and definitely not unappreciated.
Thank you.
So I know everyone is glad to have our schools back open. How have things been going for the district since you've reopened?
Thank you so much. I appreciate your kind words. The Auburn School District got through the last couple of years because of our supportive families, our partnerships with the city, the organizations in our community, and through the hard work of our students and staff. With the 22-23 school year underway, it feels great to have the pandemic kind of off to the side and we can just focus on school as normal. We're off to a successful start and look forward to a great year.
That's great. So I think it's probably safe to say, though, that post-COVID schools are in a little bit of a weird place when it comes to what we'll do with snow days, since you had remote learning and a great job that the Auburn School District did. I mean, just, switching so quickly to be able to keep our students learning. But it's got to be in a strange place now. And how do you respond to snow post-COVID?
Thank you. We are not going to be able to pivot to remote learning days when it snows, and here's why. During COVID, when we did make that transition, we learned that in order to do remote learning well, it took a lot of preparedness, a lot of work behind the scenes to be successful at it, and snow days or inclement weather don't offer us that time. The state also no longer accepts remote learning to count towards our 180-day requirement.
Oh, interesting.
And you know what? Lastly, we want kids to be kids and to have a snow day and have fun. So we won't be transitioning to remote learning on those days.
I know a lot of students will be happy to hear that. Parents, maybe not so much.
Right.
But I know the students will love that. And I love the way you phrase that. We want kids to be kids. There's nothing better than running out in that fresh fallen snow, all bundled up and warm, and just playing. Just being, as you said, kids. Because for the last couple of years, it's been really hard on our kids. We don't even know yet the full impact of what COVID has in store for us. So I love that you and the Auburn School District are really focusing on that, and thank you for clearing it up. So I have a similar question for you that I've asked our other guests on this episode. So let's first talk about preparation. Can you share with our listeners what the school district does in advance of the winter weather to prepare for winter conditions?
Absolutely. Our preparation starts the day or night before. We probably like the city, like everyone watches the weather forecast and with their predictions, try to figure out what is or isn't going to happen for the next day. I am in communication with the superintendent from afternoon, evening into the early hours of the morning. Sometimes it's possible. Sometimes we have enough data and information to make a decision the night before to have a late start or call school. Most of the time we don't. And so what happens is 3 o'clock in the morning, I've got transportation team administrators out and about the entire district, checking the roads for snow or down trees or whatever, to see if our buses can get our kids safely to school. And then we take information from the city of Auburn, from King County. We watch what other districts around us are doing, and we take all of this information into consideration to make a decision. We also need to think about, can our buses, or for example, our high school students who are driving to school, can they get there safely? Are our driveways and our parking lots clear? And do we have power? Can we heat? Can we feed our kids? All of those things. And our goal is to have a decision made by 5 o'clock in the morning. Dr. Spiciotti and I take all the factors into consideration and make that decision, and then we we continue on with communications.
I do appreciate that. As the parent of a former student in the Auburn School District, it was always great to know around 5 a.m. what we could expect for the day, and then be able to pivot if necessary for school closures. So when you have your team going out at 3 in the morning, are they in four-wheel drive vehicles? Are they in front-wheel drive? What type of a vehicle are they in? Because I'm sure some of the students are thinking, oh, sure, they're in these all-weather vehicles that can get up and down the hills no matter what's happening, and now they're going to take away our fun.
Right. They have four-wheel drive vehicles. We have vehicles that have snowplows on the front of them. So they're equipped to be around the district, to check all aspects. So apples and oranges comparison with high school students driving
Sure.
compared to our transportation staff.
Absolutely. And, I am a product of the Auburn School District and also of Green River, at that time, Community College. And Dr. Mel Lindblom
Yep.
was the president when I attended, and we always hoped that there would be a closure if there was any snow. But we knew that if President Lindblom was able to make it up the hill, the rest of us had to make it up the hill as well. I spoke just this past summer at his memorial service, and I made sure his family knew that while I appreciate that as an adult, I don't know that I always appreciated that stick-to-itiveness and ability to get to school as much as when I was a student up there.
Absolutely.
So it's clear that the school district obviously doesn't take these decisions lightly, and in the event that school schedules will be disrupted by weather or other events, how can the community be informed? I remember, like I said, when I was in school, we used to have to watch the news and anxiously wait to see if they said Auburn on the broadcast, if it was running across the bottom of the screen. And I know there's much more efficient methods to notify parents and community members now. Can you share a little bit about that with us, Cindi?
Absolutely. As soon as a decision is made, we begin to inform staff and families. We do a robocall, goes out to all staff, and then followed by a call out to all families. We utilize social media. We put a notice up on our website, on our Facebook page, Instagram, and we post everywhere about either the late start or the closure to try to cover all of our bases with letting our families know. We also have Flash Alert, which is kind of like a one-stop shop where we could put in Auburn School District, so late start, for example, and that goes out to the media and it gets posted. It's where we can go to see what other districts or organizations are doing, like Green River, and to check on that compared to what we're doing.
And can you tell us a little bit more about where is that line drawn between school closure for the day and a late start?
Sometimes, like I said, we know ahead of time whether or
Right.
not we have a late start or closure. The rest of the time is we take all of the forecast and the predictions to make a decision. If the weather is going to look like it's going to go for a while throughout the whole day, then it's easier to make the call with regard to closing the district. If we're not so sure, or if the forecast says, hey, it's going to clear up later, right? Mm-hmm. We know at a certain time the sun's going to come up and it's going to start to
Melt.
The downside of that, what I have learned, is that then sometimes, and we've had this happen a couple of times, it starts melting and then it refreezes.
Yes.
And then that catches us,
That's
right?
even more dangerous at times.
It is definitely more dangerous and challenge. You can't predict that. You would think the sun comes up, things are going to melt, and we can move on. So it's just so many factors that challenge making that right call. And instead of trying to be perfect, we just try to get it the best that we can and focus on safety as safety is the number one.
Absolutely.
We need to have staff and students get to school safely.
I couldn't agree with you more on that. Perfect, as you say, there's no way to be perfect, and perfect is the enemy of good enough or safe enough. So I do appreciate all of the efforts that you and your team put in to ensure the safety of our students. And I want to thank you again for joining me and all of our great information that you shared today. I'm hopeful that our community will take some time to get ready for the weather that may come at us this winter. Hopefully nothing too bad. And Cindi, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us before we wrap up?
Mayor Backus, I appreciate the opportunity to share with our community what we do during inclement weather to make sure that everyone is safe, and just appreciate the time to have the conversation.
Well, thank you, Cindi. We at the City of Auburn certainly appreciate the partnership with the Auburn School District. You and Dr. Spiciotti have been great partners for us, as well as your entire team. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I'm joined now by City of Auburn's Erik Cottle and Andy Boswell from our Maintenance and Operations Division, and Karissa Smith, our city's emergency manager. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Hello.
Thank you.
So I do appreciate you being at the podcast. It's really great to see all of you. And before we get into emergency information, I would like our listeners to get to know you and how you serve our residents every day. So let's start with M&O. Your team is responsible for quite a lot when it comes to our city. Erik and Andy, how would you describe the City of Auburn's Maintenance and Operations Division? And by all means, feel free to brag a little bit, because I think it's really impressive.
Sure. Thank you, Mayor. I would love to brag about the M&O is what we call it. So the Maintenance and Operations Facility is located at 1305 C Street Southwest, just east of the outlet collection. We have 80 staff members in 6 divisions: water, sewer, storm, street, vegetation, a new division under street waste management, refuse collection, and equipment rental fleet. We handle all those utilities emergency response 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, to include the snow and ice response, which we're here to talk about today.
And, the reason I say that I think you should brag a little bit is because I have been out with the crews, especially during some of our recent snowstorms. And I don't know if it's bad luck to say I hope we don't have any this year. And if it is, I just jinxed it. But the reason that we're here today is because we do want to talk about emergency preparation and what it looks like for our winter weather. But I have to share with everyone just how dedicated that team is, especially during a weather event. I don't think most people realize that they're on call 24/7, that they're up way before we are, making sure that the streets are safe if there's been ice or snow. And it goes on throughout the day, and there is no way that we're ever going to reach all of the streets in any event, and especially not the neighborhood streets. And I know we'll probably go into that a little bit more, but I'm just so impressed by the dedication and the tireless efforts of the team in a weather event, and all the time. But since we're here talking about weather, I'll just keep it at that. And Karissa, you've only been with us for a short time, and you've already made a very big impact.
Thank you.
Can you tell everyone a little bit about what emergency manager does for our residents?
Absolutely. So the role of emergency management in Auburn is overall to help our whole community get more prepared for and become more resilient to disasters. So we're a team of 2 over in emergency management, so we really rely on working with our partners, both other city departments as well as some of our community partners to do that. But some of the things that we do includes helping to develop the city's emergency response plans and protocols, doing some training and exercise so our staff can practice our emergency response. And we also host a lot of opportunities for public education, like our community emergency response team class, so that folks can learn just a little bit more about preparedness and get a little bit ready. And then during a big incident or a disaster, we really switch gears and we would be activating our emergency operations center if needed and just helping to coordinate most of the behind the scenes response for our boots on the ground responders. So police, fire, and public works, the folks who are physically out in the community, we do a lot of the logistics requests and long range planning and things behind the scenes to help that process go smoothly.
Thank you. That's a lot, especially for a 2-person team. And it really helps set the stage for what I was hoping to talk about with all of you today, preparing for emergencies and inclement weather. So since we are now in the autumn months, we know that the colder, wetter, snowy, windy, icy days are on their way. So let's just start right there. What are you all doing in your respective roles in anticipation of the winter months? Winter is coming. Karissa, let's start with you.
Yeah, so emergency management, we're always monitoring the weather, the flood stages of our rivers in Auburn. We just keep an eye on everything so that we know if something's coming down the pike that we can at least make sure, Public Works keeps an eye on those things too, but we want to make sure folks are informed of things coming up. Most of what we're doing right now is working with our response partners to coordinate plans, make sure we're all on the same page coming into the winter months so that our response plans all work together to kind of help best work with our community. We're also developing some public messaging, so if that storm does happen, which hopefully it won't, but something eventually will, we are already developing messaging to help keep our public informed and share information when things like that happen. And as I said, we're ready 24/7 to respond, activate our emergency operations center, and come in and help coordinate response if needed.
Great. Erik, Andy, how about you?
Well, our snow response starts after the last snowstorm of the year. We have to start stockpiling materials such as salt and sand to prepare for the upcoming season because the time to buy materials is not during an event. So that starts there, and then come July, our equipment rental division starts bringing in all the equipment and making sure it's properly functioning and roadworthy. And then in October, we have a team meeting with the team members of the plow drivers and go over the plow routes, chain training, set up our 12-hour shift rotation so we're prepared for the upcoming season. So when an event happens, we can implement an action plan immediately.
So really good to know that we don't wait until the snow starts before everyone is getting ready. So let's get into a little bit more detail about what's happening during a snow and ice event. And the question I'm sure that's on everyone's mind is, why is there still snow and ice on my road? And for the record, I live downtown and my residential street does not get plowed, contrary to popular belief on social media.
So our snow map, our main plow routes and de-icer routes are on the city's website at auburnlaw.gov, and they are under the residents tab under emergency preparedness, and our snow and ice routes are on there, and as long as some other good information.
Let's get into a little bit more of that detail. And maybe you can discuss a little bit more pre-event preparations, snow and ice removal routes, philosophy of that plan.
Yeah, so pre-event, a lot of weather watching for us, checking the temperature, moisture in the air, deciding whether or not we need to anti-de-ice or de-ice at that time. So that's a lot of it. So we're prepared so when the snowflakes do start coming down that we have a head start on it to mobilize the crew and have them prepared to get out there with the sanders and the de-icers after that.
So it's a lot of work. Like I said, it's not just you go outside and think, oh, there's that white stuff falling from the sky, we better do something. There's a lot of preparation in advance. So let's move over a little bit to how our emergency management team functions before, during, and after a weather event.
Sure. So as I said, we're also keeping an eye on things to help keep our community informed, making sure that we're aware of just kind of what our response partners are doing. During an event, if we're not activated in our EOC, our Emergency Operations Center, we can still help by we work very closely with King County Emergency Management. So if there was a shortage of de-icer or sand, sometimes we can help request through the King County government or even the state government some extra resources and things like that. We help, we talk with the school district, with the hospital, some of our community partners, including the Auburn Food Bank and some of the sheltering operations, just to check in, make sure folks are operating smoothly and kind of see what we can do to help. And then afterwards, we will go through an after-action report process if we did have to activate or if there was a big event. We never want to not take advantage of some of the lessons that we learned doing these things, so we make sure we write those down and implement them into our plans for the next event.
Great. And Karissa, you mentioned the sand and the salt, and Erik, I believe there was a shortage during COVID when everything else, of course we had to have shortages of things during COVID. Wasn't there a shortage? The company that processed the salt was shut down for a while?
Yes, that's one factor for us getting salt. The other one is Snoqualmie Pass and all the passes being closed. Because we get all our salt from Eastern Washington and from Utah. So if the commerce isn't moving, then we can't get supplies. But yes, there was a salt shortage, but there was a shortage of everything. And so, yes.
It was COVID.
Yes.
I think we should just forget those 2 years. But so people shouldn't be surprised to see huge mounds of salt and sand in the summer months when most people are not thinking of those things, right?
That's correct. It's all about being proactive. Like I said before, the time to order something is not during an event or try to get it. It is to try to prepare for the event.
Absolutely. And Karissa, what sort of advice do you have that could help with general winter weather preparedness, whether that's snow, ice, rain, or otherwise for our residents?
Well, I want to echo what Erik said, that the best time to get prepared for winter weather is not when winter weather is happening. We don't do that at the city level, and I always encourage our community members not to do that as well. The good news is there's a lot folks can do to get prepared, not just for winter weather, but really for any type of emergency that will go a long way towards kind of helping make sure folks are resilient. So the first thing we encourage people to do is have an emergency kit. Have one in your household and also in your vehicle, especially getting ready your vehicle for winter weather. I always tell people, if you got stuck in a snowbank in your car overnight, think about what you'd want. Not just your car accessories and chains and things like that, but warm clothes, good boots, maybe an extra blanket, some snacks and water and things like that. As far as getting an emergency kit together for a household, we always tell people to be ready for 2 weeks before any sort of aid can come in. And I think we saw that a bit during COVID when some of those supply lines were shut down or not available. Help isn't always coming as fast as we might hope it would be or think it is, especially if it's something like a power outage where it really impacts a lot of people at the same time. So we encourage people to have food on hand, especially for power outages, having shelf-stable food, having at least 1 gallon of water per person in your household per day for at least 3 days. So having at least 3 gallons of water per every single person in your household for drinking and for sanitation. Be thinking about any household medical concerns. You can oftentimes talk with your medical provider about that. If you have medical equipment that might run on electricity, be thinking about backups for things like that. Especially for winter weather, we always encourage people to, get the flashlights out now, make sure you have extra batteries on hand. Just be thinking about, if we got stuck at home for a couple of weeks and the power wasn't on, what would we need and what would we do? The second part to that is we encourage households to make an emergency plan. So knowing evacuation routes out of your home and out of your neighborhood, making sure everyone in your household knows where to meet if you have to leave your house or neighborhood, because you also don't want to figure that out while an emergency is happening. And also for any time, but also for a power outage, make sure that you have important phone numbers written down somewhere. I encourage people to keep a copy in their wallet or their purse or just somewhere on them. If your phone dies or you lose it, you might need to make some calls, and maybe not from your own phone. So just having those available ahead of time. And again, just not waiting to get prepared, be thinking about these things now. We have information on that emergency preparedness page on the Auburn website that goes into more detail about this if folks are curious.
Great. So I hope people take your advice to heart. And you did talk about power outages a little bit. I just can't emphasize enough that the city of Auburn is not responsible for power outages. Much to the surprise of some who call and think that we are not. We cannot stop ice. We cannot stop snow. We cannot stop torrential downpours. The best we can do is be prepared to counteract those once they are in place and to keep people safe as best as we can. But that also requires that our community members are doing everything that they can as well. Can you talk a little bit, Karissa, maybe about people who are in a power outage event and what should they and shouldn't they do within their homes?
Yes, absolutely. So, as you said, the city is not responsible for Auburn's power supply. That's through Puget Sound Energy. And if folks didn't already know, they have a live outage map on their website. So if you go to pse.com, it's very easy to access. You can also report power outages there and even sign up to get alerts on a specific power outage. So if the power is out at your home, you can sign up for when they anticipate that it might be restored. So I find that very helpful. As far as what folks can do at home, there's a few different things as far as power outage safety. My personal pet peeve, my preparedness pet peeve, is when people use candles during power outages. I know they're pretty, I know that they smell good, but some folks have a tendency to kind of light them all over the house, even if they're not in that room at the time, and that can be a real fire hazard.
Very dangerous.
Yeah, so we, like I said, get those batteries together, flashlights, headlamps, maybe a solar-powered lantern if you have one. There's a lot of other ways to get light throughout your home.
There's the hand-cranked flashlights as well. I have one of those, and that way you don't even have to worry about batteries.
Yeah, there's a lot of different options available. As far as some other safety things, if you can install carbon monoxide detectors in your home, also a good thing to take care of before the winter weather comes. And just making sure that during a power outage, if your family is using a generator or wants to cook on maybe a charcoal barbecue or something like that, a camp stove if you have one, make sure that those are only being used outside and at least 20 feet away from any open window. Using those inside or even in the garage with maybe the door cracked can lead to carbon monoxide poisoning. And unfortunately, we do see a spike in carbon monoxide poisoning during power outages because people just don't know. So don't use those, a charcoal grill to heat your home if you're using it, or things like that to heat your home, or just be using them outside if you need them. And then some symptoms of carbon monoxide poisoning, just for folks who don't know because it can be tricky to spot, would be things like headache, dizziness, weakness, vomiting, chest pain, or confusion. And really, at any time, if anyone's having those symptoms, you should just call 911. As far as the other big concern I get a lot for power outages is food safety. Keep the fridge closed. That's part of why we encourage people to have some shelf-stable food on hand and some alternative cooking gear and supplies in case you can't use your stove or the microwave for some reason. Typically, food in a closed fridge will keep for about 4 hours. Longer than that, you should really be checking each item individually before you eat it, not by doing a taste test, because that can still make you sick. So just take a look at it, maybe take a little sniff, and we always say, when in doubt, throw it out.
Throw it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, very good advice. We don't want people getting sick after they've been through a weather event, a power outage, and great advice not to ever bring a generator or a grill or any type of device like that inside during one of these events. I've seen all too many people who have done that with tragic outcomes. Yeah. And especially during weather events, remember our emergency aid, our fire trucks, the aid vehicles, they are very large vehicles, and it is sometimes challenging on slick, icy roads. So let's let them stay where they are and not have to come to any of our homes because we have done something that Karissa has just advised us not to do. So I really, really appreciate all of the great advice today. Any final words of wisdom that you want to share with our listeners on how to be prepared?
During a snow event is not the time to learn how to drive in the snow.
So true.
So park it.
Yeah, so I'd like to add to that too is have a secondary or even a third route out of your neighborhood or where you live. It always blows me away from time to time when I hear it that people know one way to get to their house. Plan a different route because we have to close roads. And we'd appreciate you not going around the road closed signs.
There's a reason that
yes,
those closed signs are
because
there.
It's not even safe for our plows to go down it. So as you see that, prepare for a different route and practice before it snows.
Right, and our teams do their very best to get to all of their priority roads, but sometimes some of those roads, as you say, are going to be closed because it is just not safe even for our teams who have the equipment, who know how to drive in these weather events. It's not safe for them, so it's certainly not safe for our community to be doing that. So please, please, please heed the warning signs, heed the road closed signs so that you are not stuck. And again, our first responders need to come and get you out of a situation like that. They are wonderful. They will do it, but let's not give them any more reasons to do so. So thank you, Karissa.
Thank you.
And Erik and Andy for being with me today to talk about how to be prepared in a weather event, snow, wind, ice, all of those lovely things. So I really do appreciate it. Now, I have one last question for each of you. Snow tires, do you recommend them? Yes or no? Why or why not?
I would say it depends on what kind of vehicle you're driving. If you have a rear vehicle, drive vehicle, then yes, I would definitely recommend them. If you have four-wheel or front wheel, a good all-season radial helps, but I always recommend carrying chains because you never know what conditions you have driving through Auburn because the weather changes so much. It could be snowing on Lee Hill and sunny on Lakeland Hills. So it just varies. So I'll prepare for all different climates when you're driving in the wintertime.
And how about those studded tires when it's not, when we don't have snow and ice on the road? What does that do to our roads?
It sure doesn't help. It definitely makes this roadway surface degrade quite faster, but I think the safety benefit, especially if you have a rear vehicle, a rear-wheel drive vehicle, then I think the benefit would help, but I don't know. Andy, do you have?
Yeah, I'd echo that. I would say snow tires, if you're going to be crossing the pass and in the snow and ice frequently, then not a bad idea, but get them off when the weather turns nice so they're not tearing up the road. And carry chains with you because that's really going to get you out of the trouble when you get into trouble.
Great advice. All right. Thank you very much. I do appreciate you being here with us today and providing such great information for our listeners. And that will do it for our 7th installment of That's So Auburn. Today you heard a lot about winter weather and how you can stay warm, cozy, and most importantly, safe and sound during the harsh months ahead of us. You heard a lot of information from us, so be sure to check the snow routes for links to all of the important items we have talked about so we can all get through our next weather event with as little stress as possible. And I hope you will join me for the next episode of That's So Auburn.